Celeste was a program operation director at Texas Casa, commitment to enhancing program effectiveness and operational excellence. From October 2002 to September 2015, Celeste Prather was the executive director at Casa for Hunt County, where leadership abilities and strategic oversight were instrumental in advancing the organization's mission.
Hi, y'all. Thanks for having me today. As I said, my name is Celeste. I've been with Casa in general for 23, going on 24 years. I was just sharing with them in the back that when we brought Casa for Hunt County off the ground in 2002, it seemed like I was just going to be there for about 2 years, get it off the ground. I was selling real estate, so I kind of had my real estate gig going and everything. And so here 23, 24 years later, here I still am. So be careful. It gets in your blood and you are here forever. So that's a good thing. I started volunteering with the Hopkins County program. It was our neighbor because I thought, well, I'll go next door because I felt like I had, in my home county, I had ran restaurants and I had ran car dealerships and I had been a real estate agent. And I thought, I know everybody. I don't want in their business. I just, or my cousins, all my cousins live there too. So I went into Hopkins County to volunteer, only to find out we didn't have a CASA program in Hunt County. So that's kind of where that originated. So I stayed there for 13 years. And then I came to work for Texas Casa doing quality assurance. So audits. Doesn't that sound like fun? Quality assurance audit. That's great. And then I moved on to start working with new executive directors. So we've got 74 CASA programs in the state, yours being one of them. And when a new executive director is hired, I work with them for as long as they can stand me. Some of them stay for a year or two as far as working with me, and some of them stay for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years. So it's just how long I've been here. So I'm over quality assurance now, and I work with new executive directors. I also work with program directors, and I work with board of directors. So what I don't get to work with a lot, though, is volunteers. So I'm so happy to be able to be here and work with volunteers and hear from y'all's perspective of how things are going and what you'd like to see more of or less of. So we're going to start today with just some changes. So I just wanted to kind of give you an update or give you a little bio of who I am, where I came from, and I'm really dedicated to this work. I love what I do. I love working with all the CASA folks. I try to, this is how bad it is. So when we were going to Terlingua back the first of the year, I contacted like the CASA programs on the way down there and just said, hey, come have lunch, or can I just stop by and see you? I incorporate my vacation into my CASA work. I've got to slow some of that down. But anyway, my husband is not as excited about it as I am. So anyway, all right. Is that, I'm aiming here? I'm aiming here.
Oh, is it not working?
I don't know. Oh, it worked. I just wasn't aiming right. All right. So we're going to start out first talking about change, because it seems like we have had, I think since 2020 maybe, but definitely in the last couple of years, nothing but change. And you as volunteers have probably felt it the most. It's like, we're going to do things this way. And it's like, we're going to do it this way now. So we're asking y'all to not only do a little bit more, but in a little bit different way. So even with the quality assurance cycle, which we are going to talk about a little bit later, but it's a 3-year cycle. So all 74 programs will get audited in one of those 3 years. We've had 6 major changes in that 3-year cycle, haven't we, Mary Jo? So it's a lot of change to keep up with. So everything from the Texas Casa standards, which we'll talk about, to Texas Administrative Code, things in the law, a lot of things have changed. And we and you have just had to pivot with it. It's not like it's been a choice for change. It's not like, well, you can do this if you want to. It becomes law. It becomes executive order. It becomes standard. It becomes the national realm. Everything kind of gets caught up into that. So we have to change. So my boss and Deidre and I were talking last week, and it's like, we've kind of become like the, we pivot with the best of them. I mean, because we just have had to learn how to go one way and then all of a sudden go, never mind, we're going to go this way. So we're going to talk about some of the changes. All right, so the most recent changes we've had are the standards updates. So as a CASA program, you are not only part of Texas Casa membership, you're part of the National CASA membership. So National CASA did a standards revision that went into effect January 1st, 2025. So they handed down all the different language and kind of moved one of the standards, kind of morphed it into another one, and then had some additional words for the one they had to replace. So there's some new things. Nothing, I don't think that, I mean, nothing that greatly impacts, but just kind of move some things around. That happened, it went into effect January 1st, prior to the executive orders that were handed down from the presidential and the governor executive orders going into effect. So, you know, we're expecting that again to change because in compliance with the executive orders. That's up to National CASA what they do. But we also had Texas CASA revisions that are out right now for public comment. So what we do at Texas CASA when we have revisions are we have a work group of program people like executive directors, program directors. We even had some volunteer peoples give us feedback this time. So that was really nice. Just take it from a volunteer stance because that's the boots on the ground. That's the most important stance. But so we do the revisions, we go through the committee work, we put it out for general public. So people can, like the executive directors, program directors can have response. They can do any comments that they want. If they see something in there they have a question about, or if they see a word that they think, you know, maybe if we worded it this way, or I don't understand or whatever. That actually closes, I think today at 5 p.m., doesn't it? I think. So that's been out for a couple of weeks. So for open comment, that closes today. Tomorrow, it will go before the Program Standards and Services Committee for approval to go to the board April 11th for approval by the board of directors at Texas CASA. So that's a pretty quick turnaround, but a lot of the work had been done back in the fall, just rewording some of the language that we felt was going to be rolling out in the first of the year. So some of the work was done, but most of the information in there is just from the executive orders. Some of the language was taken out, and just some of the work you'll be able to see, and we'll go over some of the specifics, but anything pertaining to volunteers is pretty much going to be updated in your policies, which I think they've just handed out to you. So you'll be able to see that y'all are already ahead of the game. We'll go over some of the specifics in the standards in a moment. Well, I guess we can actually go over them now. So it's, look at this, here they are. This is them printed off. This is all of the revisions stuff. So mainly what it took out was mostly that stuff that was in the executive order, so that we had the president, President Trump sign an executive order, and then following Governor Abbott sign an executive order as it pertains to DEI and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that language has been removed or worded, instead of using certain words, we are using words that are like welcoming, community, things like that. And honestly, this gets down to just the way we do business, and it's the way we've always done business. It's, volunteers advocating for kids, all kids. We advocate for all kids where they are, and we want the best outcomes for all kids and all families. And that honestly is what CASA has been since the beginning of time. The words have changed over time, but we still, our mission is still the same. We still advocate for children and families where they are. We still want best interest outcomes for all kids and families. If you don't get anything else out of this day, please take that with you, as we want best interest for all kids and families. I don't know, but it's important that I go through. If y'all have you got everything incorporated already into your policies? Well, I'm not going to go through that then, because that will be not a good use of your time. So I would say read your policies and procedures. That's the best way to know, what's expected of you. There were just a couple of changes that pertain to volunteers, but honestly, not that much. All right, so they asked me to talk a little bit about House Bill 567. So it was a couple of legislative sessions ago when the legislators down in Austin decided to try to change, or they didn't try, they did change the definition of neglect. So the reason for removals decreasing in a lot of counties across the state is because the definition changed. So now when the CPS investigator goes out into the home, they're looking for more immediate danger or imminent danger. So maybe a case that they might have gone out in 4 or 5 years ago might have resulted in a removal, may not result in a removal today. So I think that's good and bad, right? I think that maybe there were some kids coming into care that didn't need to come into care, didn't have to come into care. And now possibly there's some kids, not coming into care that might have needed to come into care because they didn't meet the threshold. So it kind of puts the CPS workers, the attorney, and the judges in a little bit of a quandary because they're having to decide, am I safely leaving this child in the home, or do I need to remove? And it kind of puts them in the middle of having to decide that. I know in speaking with my local judge, he was telling me that, he said when it first rolled out, that it was really hard because they felt like on some of the cases, they were either going to violate the law by bringing the child into care or lose sleep at night by not bringing the child into care. So I think it was kind of understanding what that looks like. And you have also different definitions of, like if a kid is over the age of 12, they might come into care if they were under the age of 12. But being over the age of 12, they're not going to come into care because that child can speak for themselves, ask for help. Sometimes siblings, we used to remove all sibling groups, or not we, CPS used to remove all sibling groups, all the siblings in the family. Well, they might not do that now. They might remove the one that the abuse was affecting and leave the others in the home. We're seeing a lot of different things. So the numbers of kids in care are down, which, in effect, is a good thing. We don't want to act like kids coming into foster care is a good thing, right? Because it might not be, but also, we know that abuse didn't just stop with 567, that abuse is still occurring. So when I meet with my executive directors weekly, what they tell me is that numbers are down. We've got some programs. We've got one in North Texas that has had 10 removals in 1 year. And they used to have like 80. So that's a big difference. They're concerned that, abuse didn't stop. It just is being looked at differently. So that's a little concerning. But just knowing that, and then some of the, what I was going to say was some of the EDs are telling me that the cases, and I don't know if y'all find this in your area, that some of the cases that are coming in are like extreme. Are y'all seeing that they're not just any case is bad, but I mean, they're extreme physical abuse, extreme sexual abuse, extreme, whatever it is, it's the worst of the worst cases. And so, that's hard on the staff, that's hard on the volunteers, and most certainly, hard on the children and trying to find placement and local placement and all that. So you're seeing the worst of the worst. And so I say that to say, take care of yourself also during this process. Any questions on 567? It's kind of an old thing, but it's still affecting us. And the theory is, I have nothing scientific to back this up. The theory is the pendulum is swinging and the pendulum always swings back. We've seen it several times back in Amy help me, was it like 06 when Senate Bill 6 came out and they beefed up investigations and they were removing kids. I mean, just the opposite of this. Removing kids right and left. Well, what they didn't think about was they didn't beef up the CVS unit, the conservatorship unit. So they're removing all these kids. And I know in our county, we had 4 caseworkers and we had, I think 317 kids, like in a very short amount of time, because they were removing just like crazy, but they didn't have anybody over here to catch them, So, but the pendulum then swung back and it leveled out. So I don't know. I hope that, I hope there's a good medium where that kids that, need protection and need help and families that need help, we can help those kids. And then the kids that are left there can also get the assistance while keeping the kids in the home still. All right. So the other little bit of change was community-based care. Who all's familiar with community-based care? So that is 4 kids, 4 families. So you're working with 4 kids, 4 families now. I believe in all 3 of your counties, right? Okay. I meant to look before I came in and then I guess I could look there. So what this is the community-based care map. So every one of these different areas are called a catchment area. And what the intent of that is to privatize foster care. So where you used to work with CVS units, your conservatorship workers, you're now working with 4 Kids, 4 Families in stage 1. And then they start taking over like the placements and they start taking over all of it. So you'll be working with that one entity for all of your things, with the exception of investigations. So while that's a great thing, some of the concerns that have come out of it is like in the Panhandle, we have a place called it's called the SSCC, which is just the licensing agency, is St. Francis. And then here we have To Engage, OCOK, Empower, 4 Kids, 4 Families, and help me here, I can't remember the name of that one. Anybody know? I don't remember. But anyway, then we've got some other areas, but we have Belong down in here. Bear County, which is San Antonio, went live a couple of years ago with Family Tapestry. It only lasted less than 1 year and it went down and they pulled out and went back to Kansas. But so you've got all these different case management organizations, nonprofits on top of that. They're nonprofits. So they're competing for money in your area, but they are different staff, different kind of rules, different how they do things, different how they meet with the programs. So the best thing you can do in your community is build that bridge, make that connection with 4 Kids, 4 Families. And I think from what I hear, y'all have done a great job with building the bridge and making the connections. But they all sign a memorandum of understanding with the state. So they act in the place of Child Protective Services. So they have the same rules and and responsibilities, but they're not state workers. They're nonprofit workers. So it's a little bit different. But so the good thing is, I guess, is just this year, DFPS, so CPS, state office, is enforcing that all of these different catchment areas sign the exact same MOU. So whereas it was, everybody kind of had their own, and this is the way we're doing things, and this is the way we're doing things, and it was a real big mess. So starting the first of the year, they're all having to sign the same one. So now we all have to do things the same way. So fingers crossed that's gonna get better. But just getting to know your provider, meet with them. Have you guys had turnover with 4 Kids, 4 Families? I'm looking at some heads nods. Yeah. So you're getting to know you get to know the caseworker, and then the caseworker is gone and you get to start all over. So what are some ways that y'all have found helpful in maintaining that relationship and knowing where the kids are placed and if they're getting moved, and is there an ARD, or what are some ways that y'all have found beneficial? And Zoom, if y'all have got anything on Zoom, let me know in the chat.
I can say one of the things, and this is the first case that we've ever had. We're still pretty new in it, but one helpful piece of communication is getting the monthly reports through email, and everybody's copied on the email.
Okay.
So that helps at least a little bit keep us all on the same page, I think. We also send to the whole team environment our visit reports and things like that. So trying to keep some type of dialogue.
Right.
The missing piece, in my opinion, is there's never any face-to-face meeting to team.
That human connection.
I mean, they may have it.
Yeah.
We're, as volunteers, we're certainly not involved in it. To where there's face-to-face to talk about the cases and what's going on with the cases, the good and the bad, and to be able to be understood and to understand, the bigger picture. There's just not any of that. It's email, it's maybe a text. There's no face-to-face.
So like no staffing or.
It would be excellent.
There may be staffing, but at least us as volunteers are not involved. And the only time we've ever been to a staffing meeting was just before a court.
That was wonderful, just before court staffing.
It's only been one time.
Yeah. What were you saying?
I said I agree that there needs to be some type of regular staffing. Once a month, once every 2 months. I mean, these are people, they're all people that are concerned with working on it. And I think like Dale was saying, your emails and texts, but you don't ever really get to see a person and kind of know maybe what their email tone is. Those have no tone. There's no context. They're words on a paper.
Right.
And you can
Yeah.
decide what the person is really trying to convey by word. There's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of tone, there's a lot of the body language that goes into that.
Yeah.
That just isn't there on a piece of paper or on a phone screen.
Yeah.
You just don't get, even over the phone. You know, if you're not meeting with somebody regularly, you can't really discern that.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Decipher it.
yeah, and in an email, sometimes you might type it one way and she might read it a different way, right? You know, and so then you have like hurt feelings or somebody mad or a misunderstanding or what do you mean by that or whatever. And if you're in a room, you can say, what do you mean by that? You know, help me understand where you're coming from. So yeah, so that's a really good point. Was there something in the chat?
Yeah, we did have something, somebody mentioned that they too were prioritizing text and email. So it seems like there's a lot of technological communication.
Right. And why do you think that is? It's easier, it's more convenient. I don't know. I agree, though. The meeting in person is just, you get more information and you build that relationship with that person. And that's kind of what this is about a little bit. I mean, like it's advocating for kids and families, but it's also relationship building in just about everything you do. You're building a relationship with the attorney, you know, with your worker, with your, with your caseworker from 4 Kids, 4 Families, with the kids and families and the foster parents. It's all relationship building. So in person is, yes, dear.
So we have that same person who did mention that they've accompanied conservatorship workers to some of their face-to-face visits.
Mhm.
So looks like school meetings, parent visitations,
Yes.
and then kind of collaborated.
That's a great idea to go together on a visit. Not every visit, because you want to have your own, right? But yeah, that's a great idea as far as just jump in the car or asking them to jump in the car with you or, you know, whatever your policy is. If I'm breaking policies, Mary Jo, let me know. But yeah, whatever the policy is, just trying to collaborate. And, you know, I know the attorneys used to ride with us a lot. I would go, I'm going to go see so-and-so. And the attorneys like hop in the car and go. So that helps a lot. So that helps get you some FaceTime. But yeah, the thought, those are good thoughts. And I know everybody in the room is writing stuff down. So, but I think the thought about community-based care when it first rolled out was like, this will never make it where it's not. And so a lot of us, of me included, just stood back and waited for the first ones to fail, thinking it's going to go up in smoke and we're going to go back to what we were doing. Not going up in smoke. It's actually working in a couple of areas. They've been up and running a while, so it's actually working. But all I would say is give it a chance. Give them a little grace to that they are new and they're not really knowing what they're doing yet. And you know, you guys can be the helper to kind of help guide them along. And maybe they'll stay with their jobs, and that would be the best thing for all of us if they would stay with their jobs. But I don't see this going away anytime soon. There's been too much time and effort and money put into it from the legislative session to see it go backwards. I don't think it will go backwards. That said, I don't think it's been successful in any other state. I think we modeled Florida, I think. And then there was a couple in Kansas that had rolled out. It really has not been successful. So if we make it in Texas, look how big we are. If we make it successful, that's going to be quite a feat, and it's all going to be attributed to you guys because volunteers are the ones that are keeping it, you know, plugged in and keeping it, the workers and making the contacts and keeping the communication and building those bridges. So it'll be much credit to you guys. All right, so next steps. Oh, yes.
Before you move on from there, could you touch a little bit for us on being as this is new to us too, what the oversight looks like for these 4 Kids, 4 Families and places like that? Who is the oversight and what is the relationship between them and what remains of DFPS?
Yeah.
Is one subordinate to the other?
Sure. So they do have a community-based care liaison that it reports to DFPS, so to CPS office, and to the commissioner. So the commissioner of DFPS has been meeting with the local SSCCs around the state. So that provides the oversight. They also they have oversight to the legislators to keep continuing getting their funding. They have to produce certain numbers and certain quotas and, you know, all the things they have to be showing. What are you doing?
The camera was like kind of,
Oh, it was like.
so I was trying to trick it. I was trying to be conspicuous. Sorry, everyone.
So, you know, and I left something out here too, to your point. So the reason for this and in these areas is each one of these community-based care, the thought behind it is, and the purpose is to keep kids in their communities. So like if they're removed from the panhandle, they don't go to Houston. It's to keep kids in their communities, in their schools, in their, you know, close to their families, close to their connections and that kind of stuff. We haven't seen a lot of that yet, because the ones that continually go to Houston are kids like in RTCs and stuff, and that's where all the residential treatment centers are in Houston. But the commitment from each one of these community-based care providers to the legislature is that they will do that they will get these kids placed within their community. When I say community, within their area. And then it's also supposed to stop like Dallas, like just say Dallas area, from being placed in 4 kids for family homes. Dallas is supposed to stay here, their kids are supposed to stay here, and our kids are supposed to stay here, and all that. So we haven't seen a lot of success in that yet. But with that, the SSCCs are also supposed to be recruiting foster homes. So they have a big job. I mean, back 100 years ago, not 100 years ago, but when I first started, you kind of had one worker that did all of it. You know, they did the recruiting and they did the investigations and they did they did the whole thing. But that was a little different. And then they changed to CPS recruiting the foster homes in the area. So the goal is to have the kids removed, but have them stay in their geographical area. So that's one thing that the legislators will be looking for, because that's the main goal, is that kids stay in their home area. So let me get a drink here.
So what happens when like the organization that had like Bear County,
Yeah.
when they folded or pulled out, what happens then? Because there's no staff at CPS
Yeah.
to accommodate that change.
Yeah, that was rough. Luckily, well, because it kind of surrounded, but they had to bring it back. You know, so what's happening in like this area, is it here? Yeah, this area here, central. Excuse me. They don't have a contract yet. But it's impossible for them to keep workers, CPS workers, because they know that if the contract comes in, they have 2 choices: go somewhere else within CPS to keep their retirement and their health benefits and all that, or go to work for the SSCC. So you're seeing some staff transition over from CPS to the SSCC, but you're seeing a lot of tenured staff. If you've been with CPS 15, 20 years, you don't want to lose everything you've built up. So, and you're not going to wait for the SSCC to come in, because all these other jobs are going to be filled. You're going to try to find one of those. So then they've got to hire the person, and that person has to know they're temporary because the SSCC is coming in. I mean, it's just kind of a big issue. And the original rollout was like 1 year and then 2 years. There were phases, and now they've sped up. Is that a word? Sped up, speeded up, whatever it is. Those phases. So it's not like they're not rolling them out slowly. They're like, they hit the accelerator on it. So, you know, yeah, to your point, I mean, it's hard to keep the workers, but in San Antonio, they had to go back in and because they didn't give them notice when Family Tapestry pulled out of San Antonio. It wasn't like, well, in 6 months, they're saying we're not going to renew. After that first year, they're like, we're out. So they had to rehire to take care of all those kids that were in care or shuffle them around to the, surrounding. You know how it is when you lose staff in your CPS, the surrounding counties kind of take up and that's what they were doing. And I'm hearing in the Central Texas area right now where there's not an SSCC that the CASA programs don't even know who their workers are. Because whoever the worker was is no longer there because they've taken a job in, I don't know, child placing unit section or whatever. They've gone to a whole different section of CPS, or they've gone to work, at HEB. They've done something else. So it's just, all areas of the state are in a very different, mode right now. Now, interesting enough, in this area, in the Permian Basin, they've kind of started their own they started working this before, they don't have an SSCC yet. They kind of started working the ministry side of things, but they started working with the local churches and trying to develop their own little SSCC within their community. There is a bill in front of the legislature this year to give them permission to do that. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Did I leave anything out on community-based care? Any more questions on it? It's kind of a stay tuned to be continued kind of thing, but yeah, your team will keep you updated, I'm sure. The main thing is just keeping that relationship with 4Kids, 4Families right now, and just, keep after them, stay plugged into them, ask to meet with them, get them to meet you for coffee, make some muffins, whatever it takes. Sometimes you got to be that bridge builder. CASA is a great bridge builder. I mean, you had to do it with CPS before, and you have to do the same thing with the SSCC. All right. So those were all maybe not all, most of the changes that have affected, you as a volunteer directly. So talking about next steps, what are some things that can be helpful? So hopefully us, Texas Casa, can be helpful. We have tons and tons and tons of resources. Our favorite job at Texas Casa, believe it or not, is not the quality assurance audit. It's just not. We like being a resource to programs. We like meeting with people. We like saying, hey, did you know, hey, you want to collaborate on something? If you've got a great idea, boy, reach out. We'd love to collaborate. We love a good little work group. My work groups are shorter. My work groups are like, let's get it done, get a product, and get out. Some of the work groups go on for months. So careful which work group you sign up on. But we love to provide assistance, support. I will say that everybody that I work with at Texas Casa will absolutely do anything to help a program, especially a volunteer. But to help a staff member, a board member, or for a resource, if we don't have the resource, we will find a resource. We'll develop a resource. We'll do whatever it takes. So always feel comfortable in reaching out to us. Here we go. So here we talked about the Texas Casa standards. So that was the FY 2023 version. We're about to have the FY 2025 version. Hopefully we're going to stick to those for at least 3 years. But so what's included in the standards is it outlines, what makes a CASA program. What can CASA programs do? It talks about the mission of the CASA program. It talks about what finances look like. It talks about what board members have to be 21 and all the things. It talks about staff, what kind of staff recruitment you do. Talks about volunteer recruitment. What do we do? What are we looking for in volunteers? They have to be 21. They have to go through the criminal background check. They have to in-person interview, and then training, and then continue training, which you're doing now. 12 hours of in-service training. Do you know there are very few anything else in our field, including like that, require as much in-service training as we do? It's such an important role that you guys do because it's educational, it's medical, it's, it's face-to-face visits and working with parents and working with attorneys and working with the SSCC. So it's 12 hours of in-service training annually on the various subjects. So the standards are in compliance. So the Texas CASA standards are always in compliance with the national CASA standards. So you don't have to worry about reading both of them. If you read the Texas CASA standards, you're in compliance with national standards. National CASA owns the brand. So this little fellow right here, they own that. We can't change the color of that. We can't, what did we try to do last year that we couldn't do? Oh, we were trying to track how many miles volunteers had traveled to see kids statewide. And we tried to put this little guy on a rocket ship. We could not do that. We tried to make it like to the moon and back 3 times or something like that. It was like, no, you can't put the little guy on a rocket ship. So we can't mess with the logo. But it outlines everything in the standards as far as, you know, how many times, how often you have to see kids, how often you need to meet with parents, the monthly contact with the CPS worker. It outlines all of that. It also talks about the public relations, breach of confidentiality, conflict of interest. It outlines it. So if there's ever a time that you just can't sleep, get you a copy of these standards. So keep it by your bed, open that up, you will go right to sleep. But anyway, they're really, I mean, it really does outline it. And there's really, if there's ever a question of what, if you can do something or can't do something, you can, it's outlined in there. And if you ever have a question, you can reach out and ask us. So, excuse me, the quality assurance process. Let me tell you how volunteers play a vital role in that. So we review all the policies for starters, make sure that's in compliance, but we do case file reviews. So we select case files randomly, maybe a case one of you guys are on, and we look at the compliance. We look to see when was the child visited. We select 3 months, select June, July, August, let's say, and we'll look for your visits. We read your notes. We look to see that educational advocacy was provided. We look to see that medical advocacy was provided. We looked, the child was visited, the CPS worker was contacted, the placement was contacted, that you had contact with your volunteer supervisor, all of that's monthly. And then quarterly, educational, medical, did I miss something? Oh, but that was on the next page. I was coming to it. I'm going down the list, sorry. The educational advocacy, medical advocacy, and legal advocacy is quarterly. And then next page, parents are, because that's new for this review. Parents are contacted monthly. Safety advocacy. Let's talk about safety advocacy. Well, we're kind of get into it on the next sheet too, but during the quality assurance cycle, we are looking for that safety advocacy because that's a compliance with the Texas Administrative Code and it's in our standards. We see safety in all of your notes. We see no concerns noted. Believe it or not, that's safety advocacy, right? We're not saying look for concerns. We're saying if you saw no concerns, then just note, you know, was in the home, no concerns were noted. Or we had one, we did it was on an East Texas program last year, did a quality assurance review, and in all the notes, in nearly every file we read, it was they asked the child monthly on the visit, you know, do you feel safe? And in about, I think it was the second or third month that we were looking at it, they had written in the notes, the child asked me, why do you ask me that every month? And I was like, oh, I guess that's good. But the child even noticed it was asked so much that the child noticed that they were getting asked that every single month. But so you guys play a big role in the success of the quality assurance process that the kids are seeing. And it's a big part of our process. It's probably the lengthiest part of our process, but because we go through, depending on the size of the program, we go through either 6 files, 12 files, or 18 files. And they're randomly selected and we do a little share screen and we just go through your Optima notes. So using your activity types, making sure you're putting good notes, because with community-based care right now, my personal fear is that some of the child's records will be lost because they have, you know, CPS has Impact. That's their big system. And I keep asking the question about, well, how do we know that, let's just say 4 kids, 4 families, notes are getting into Impact? And I get told, well, they have access. And I was like, well, I have access to the gym and I don't go. So I'm just telling you, it might not be happening. So just making sure that, you know, your notes are good, because our notes could become the not official record, but it could be the most thorough, beneficial record that these kiddos have if at some point, you know, they want to know what happened and where. And we do have that happen, you know, every so often that kid will come back and ask a question about something. So it's just super important. The work is the most important. You're doing the work, you know, seeing the kids and doing all the things and talking to all the people. Documentation, which is nobody's favorite, is the second most important, because Yeah, you've always heard the old thing, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Kinda, it needs to be documented. So you can do things like talk to text. That's a great new thing. I'm old and I found that to be very beneficial. You have to check your words sometimes. With the East Texas slang I have, sometimes the word I said does not come out on the paper exactly the same. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know about the role of the standards and the quality assurance, how important the volunteer role is in the quality assurance success. And we always tell the staff, please thank your volunteers for us, because it's a lot of work. And I'm always amazed when I read the notes that I have a visual of the kids sitting on the bed, reading the story, it's just like you can start to visualize these kids. And then it's kind of sad because, then we leave and I never know the end of the story. I'm not at liberty to call back and say, what happened to little Johnny? Did he do okay? You just kind of leave and wonder, but the notes and stuff that you guys write are amazing, that we can come in and read. And with just reading 3 months of that 1.5 year case, can get a real good vision of what's going on in that child's life. So thank you for your notes. All right, so the other thing Texas Casa does for support is pass-through funding. So y'all come into play here as well. Y'all are going to be surprised at how much we depend on you. You just thought you had a big burden. I'm fixing to make it worse, I think. So VOCA and HHSC. So VOCA is Victims of Crime Act and HHSC is Health and Human Services Commission. So I was going to say VOCA is federal, but it kind of turned state last year because of the ARPA funds. But anyway, basically federal and state. HHSC is the money we get from the legislature. So that's what we're down there gunning for right now. So how volunteers, yes.
Can you just briefly touch on that truck froze the VOCA funds and why we were safe?
I don't know that I know why we were safe.
Because of what you just said.
The ARPA funds, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, well, first it started out with COVID. That's how this whole thing started first, was ARPA funds. Was Victims of Crime Act funds comes from when you have courts, trials and stuff, and it's the Victims Compensation Fund. Well, during COVID, all that kind of came to those federal trials came to a halt because, nobody was doing that. And so then we were in a two-year cycle. So then we started thinking, okay, where are we going to get money? So then we had the ARPA funds, and now you're going to ask me what ARPA stands for. American Relief Plan Act. Is that it? Something like that. So then we started getting ARPA funds to kind of compensate us for the missed VOCA funds. And then that, to your point, is what happened with the VOCA funds when the federal freeze happened. We didn't know. We were like, is that us? Is that not us? Is that us? It was, go back to that pivot one, it was not us, because at that point, currently, we are still covered under the ARPA funds. Is that what you meant for me to
Yeah,
mean?
so Texas decided to.
And rainy day fund, we got rainy day fund.
Specifically for CASA, and I think CAC, and maybe a couple others.
Right.
From general revenue budget. So the funds didn't get frozen for us because they weren't actually
federal funds. Right, they weren't federal funds.
We were breathing a sigh of relief on a lot of other organizations.
Man, that was a rough 2 weeks. I mean, that was such a rough 2 weeks. But yeah, so we got some rainy day fund also built in there. So how the VOCA and HHSC both have funding formulas. So it's funded by children served, how many volunteers are serving on a case, percentage of kids served in care, percentage of kids in your program served by a volunteer. So all of that relates back to that. And then for your HHSC funds, we report, you do all those activity types and all those hours and stuff. We report all that to HHSC for funding. So you play a really important role in the quality assurance process and in the funding for your program. All right, the advocacy impact. I decided if you could read that or not. The ripple effect, every act of kindness has a positive ripple effect. So that's where you guys come in also. We're going to talk next about some of the well-being measures, but you know, everything that you do, everybody you touch, everybody you talk to, every kid that you have advocated for, the ripple effect goes on. You know, if you're in this business long enough, you've got kids that, I've got kids that are, I don't know, 35. I think my oldest one's 35, that I stay in contact with. You don't know really, you know, what you're planting, what seeds you're planting. And that goes back to y'all's little seed planting thing. But with these kiddos, but it does have a positive effect in meeting with the parents and giving parents, you know, encouragement to keep going and to, you know, encourage visits and come to your visits. Your kids need to see you and encourage them on their services when they're working their services. Encourage them to keep going and compliment them on going. Just that positive effect and working, because we have not walked in any of their shoes. We don't know, you know, what their life is like. I always say, you know, most of us are just one fail swoop, you know, from being in their situation. You know, we could have made a similar decision and been right where they are. So I've got one of my past moms now is truly one of my best friends. She's I helped her give her first grandson's baby shower, and we talk all the time. And you know, she started having trouble. She lost her kids the first time, and we didn't give them back. We placed them with her mom. And then the mom gave them back to her because she was doing well. And then she slipped up. Kids came back into care. And I remember just being so frustrated, and I was just probably not very nice. And I was like, just help me decide, you know, where these kids going to go, because it's not fair that they're back in care again. And anyway, she proved me really wrong, and she worked her services. She worked her tail off, and she got her kids back. And I asked her at the end of that case, I was like, what was the difference? What was the difference in 1 and 2? She said, well, in the first case, y'all didn't really hold me accountable. Y'all just kind of let my mom have them, and I knew I could see them when I wanted to. And, you know, and then she got them back. And she said, in number 2, I knew this was it. I knew this was the grand finale. So it's just a difference in, I don't know, in accountability and encouragement. And she knew this was it. And took it more seriously that second time around. But even with your kids, I mean, you'll be amazed at, with these families you work with, that years later, they will pop back up somewhere. They'll pop back up on, you know, Facebook, or, you know, I've got 4 that I have a turkey trot from my house every single year, 13 years running. If you don't have nothing to do on Thanksgiving Day, come to my house. We had, but I had 4 show up at my turkey trot this year, and they're in their 30s. So they just, you know, some of them stay connected. I had one 2 weeks ago that her daddy suddenly passed away. He had been ill, and she needed help paying for a funeral. So, you know, you help in certain ways. I didn't pay for the funeral, but I mean, you know, I helped her through that process. But it's just, you never know. And they feel comfortable reaching out to you, you know, later on, once they're grown and not in the system anymore. But just keep in mind that you guys are doing amazing things, and your positive impact on them is life-changing and everlasting. All right, so this little document is so hard to read. And maybe you can read it better up there. So we developed this document a few years ago. These on the left-hand side here are all the activity types that you guys have the opportunity, this and the next page. So we talked a little bit about safety advocacy earlier. That's this column. This column is connections, and then this column is transition to adulthood. So those are all in our well-being pillars. These are the things that we report to HHSC. What is in each of these columns are ways to achieve that result through that activity type. So like if you are attending a hearing, just for the first one, the safety advocacy, make sure safety recommendations are in the court report. If it's for connections, determine if the child's connections are able to attend. You know, are the child's connections part of the court hearing? Can they come speak to the judge on behalf of the child? And then transition to adulthood, advocate for the youth to attend. You know, if those kiddos are going to be aging out of the system, super important that they come to court and have that time with the judge, that it's not just a, you know, check off. We're just gonna, okay, he's doing well in his placement. How many times have we heard they're doing well in their placement? That the youth get to come and have some FaceTime with you. You talked about FaceTime earlier. Have some FaceTime with the judge. But each one of these are just kind of meant for ideas. These are not all things that we're asking you to do. Let me start by saying that. We're not adding to your plate. But these are just all ideas of ways that you can connect with safety, connections, and adulthood while you're already doing these things. So while you're already doing the face-to-face, these are some ways to, just kind of some ideas to keep in mind. And then next page. Same thing. So it's safety, advocacy, connections, and transition to adulthood. We're going to start a focus group next month on kind of transition to adulthood, but more like extended care. So for any of those kiddos that are 18, that are still in care, that have chosen to stay into care to like 21, you know, what it looks different advocating for those kids. So we're going to come up with something like that next month. But observing visitation, here's your 16+ advocacy. For those of you that may have advocate for kids that are 16 and above, there's a lot of new stuff. If you do have any kids of that age, Texas Workforce is paying for driver's ed now. Yay. That's a new big thing. So make sure that you get in on that. Something else I was going to say about that. What was that? Oh, they're doing a pilot program down around the Austin area for kids and savings accounts. So that would just be really great if we could figure out how to get them. So that way, when they exit care, that they do have something, they know how to set up a bank account, and they do attend PAL services and that kind of thing. But just making sure that these kiddos that are exiting care are ready to exit care. That, you know, think about, for those of you that have kids, or when you were exiting your own parents' home, think about if you didn't have that support, what that would have been like. If you were just, you know, leaving your house when you turned 18, you know, you got said, see ya, here's your clothes. Where would you go? Who would you call and what would you do? I mean, so just making sure before that exit day happens, there's things in place and having conversations with those kids. Kids know, they know who their people are. Even young kids, you know, younger kids, you know, if they're in care and if there's people that they're missing, trying to find those connections. Here's some ideas for the safety advocacy there, legal advocacy. So just some different options there. I'm sorry that print's so small. We're trying to fit a lot of ideas on a couple of pages. So here's y'all. So for FY24, these are instances and hours for your program as reported by your program. 487 kiddos. Look at that. 9,248 hours. That's a lot of hours. And instances are each time you did something. So it might have been an hour, it might have been 10 minutes, but each time you did something. 11,810. That's amazing. If you don't like take that, divide that out. I did it on my paper somewhere, but that's amazing. These are the things that we report to HHSC, but we report them in the pillars, like we talked about the well-being pillars. So we take the statewide averages and we report them to each one. We also reported out in the annual report this year. I think it was was it the instances or hours? Do you remember, Mary Jo? Is anybody getting hot or cold? I think we did hours this year. But anyway, and so that way in the annual report, statewide, people can see exactly what your program is doing. But this is your work. This is the work that you do and the work that you put into Optima. I see I've been this whole hour and said Optima not one time.
Here,
What? Yeah.
this group.
Your program. This is your program's hours for last year. I started to pull what it was year to date already just to see what it was, but I ran out of time. That's amazing to me. I mean, I compared it to some other programs that were similar size. Y'all excelled in this really well. So remember that anytime your supervisors are, anytime your supervisors are hounding you about, get your stuff in Optima. This is why. Do they do that? Do they hound y'all? Yeah, I knew they did. This is why, because I just want you to know that all the work you're doing and I don't mean work you're doing going and seeing your kids, but then also putting in an Optima, that's also work. We're doing something with it. We're not just, and it doesn't stop at your local program. They report it to us. We report it to HHSC. They use it for grant funding. We report it to National Casa. I mean, so it's used a whole lot. So I just don't want you to feel like that we're asking you to do all this stuff and just put it in file 13 and moving on down the road.
Would you say that those are good numbers? I mean, I don't know what comparatively, I don't have anything to compare.
I just quickly yesterday compared to just, I would say, similar size programs around the state, and those are very good numbers. You should be proud of those numbers.
Less than 20 hours per child for the year.
Yeah, but
Some of them came in at the last part of the year.
but keep in mind, maybe not all volunteers are as good as y'all, and aren't putting everything in, right? The importance of putting everything in. And the other thing is too, and this is not good or bad, but let's just say it's, I don't know what y'all's policy is on this, Amy, but let's just say you went to a child visit. Okay, and during the visit, it was an hour, but during the visit, CPS was there and the attorney popped in and y'all did some medical advocacy. Let's say you did 4 activity hubs. You put it in the one. So that's going to reduce this immediately, right? So you don't want to put an hour for each one because they weren't an hour for each one. There's no right or wrong way to do that, but these are very good numbers comparatively. And I can tell you, this is underreported because think about the time that you spend thinking about your case.
For sure.
Do you log that? Yeah, no. I mean, because you think about your case probably when you're supposed to be sleeping. So those are underreported hours. We know they're underreported hours, so. But very good work. Okay, so this was a hard screenshot to catch too. Anyway, because this kept going up when I would try to catch it, anyway, I finally got it. But this is the Learning Center at Texas Casa, which has been under a revamp, to be in compliance. We went in and revamped all of our material and took our website down for about 2 weeks, and it's been brought back up. But I just wanted you to show you guys. So this is in the Learning Center here. Here's the home screen, Learning Center here. Here's resources by topic. So anytime you have something come up that you have a question on or whatever, I bet we have a resource in there. If it's not in there, call me and I'll find you one. It's got advocacy for youth, collaborative family engagement, which we'll talk about in a minute, family finding permanency, older youth, public policy, sex trafficking, child sexual exploitation, volunteer training, and well-being and health. There's tons, and that's just a tip of the iceberg. There's tons of stuff in there. But that's on our Texas Casa website. CFE training opportunities. I checked before I did this. This is good for volunteers or staff, so you're welcome to attend, and I'll send the link out to you guys when we're finished. But so that date's gone, so but May 15th and July 17th. So if you want to do a statewide training, you're more than welcome as volunteers to sit in on that. That will also help you meet your in-service training hours, but it also will help you meet your topics required, your certain topics we have to get. So that will help you meet that. That was the next thing I was going to do, I think. Let me see if this is it. CFE. Does everybody know what CFE is? Collaborative Family Engagement. Okay. All right. So I love me some Carlos Santana. Anyway, there is no greater reward than working from your heart and making a difference in the world. That's what you guys do. You guys, you're not doing this because it pays a lot. You're not doing this because there's perks. You're not doing this because you get gold ribbons, awards. You're doing this because it's coming from the heart. You want to do this to make, your world and your county a better place to live. And it's working. You'll see it over and over and over. It's working. So thank you for what you do. And if you are not signed up for the newsletters from Texas Casa, aim your little phone right there, and it will take you to sign up for the newsletters. That's where the Casa voice is more forward facing. So it's more maybe some legislative stuff and fund development stuff. Inside Casa is more geared towards internal trainings and staffing and volunteers and stuff. They also, what did I do with my phone? They have a training set up for, I had to text them these because I forgot, for volunteers, and it's quarterly. And the next one is coming up. I didn't get it in time for the May 7th at 12 noon. It's on educational advocacy. So if you go to, let me go back, if you go to, news and events right there. And you go down and it says the events calendar, click on the events calendar, you'll see all the things that are coming up, all the training opportunities. But that one is on educational advocacy on May 7th at 12 noon. Okay. Oh, and that's me. Any questions? Any discussion? That was a lot. I tried to walk you through the journey of a volunteer, but I really want you to know the value of what you do. Not everybody can be a CASA volunteer. Everybody's not cut out for it. So those of you that have chosen to do this, I really appreciate it. And I know the kids do too. Families do. And Mary Jo does.
So I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I really appreciate the recontextualization that you provided, which really does show how, as a volunteer, we're affecting children's lives for the better. But then two, we're also seeing what the work does on a different level.
Right.
That moves upward. So that was really great to see. And I'm happy that everybody got to see that.
Yeah. I really wanted you to understand that the work you do is valuable on so many levels. It's not, it's not just the obvious, which is the advocacy for the kids and families that, it's so many levels, and everything that you do, we take it and use the information, for the betterment and forward of the program. So. Oh,
And we do have a question in our chat. Somebody is wondering who is kind of covering and over our driving efforts for our kids. I think you mentioned something about driving or driver's license.
oh, yeah, Texas Workforce.
Okay, Texas Workforce.
Yeah, I can send you the link when I get
That'd be
back.
great.
Will you send me an email and say, send me the link?
Absolutely.
Because I'll forget. By the time I get back to Hunt County, I'm gonna forget. And then we heard, let's see, on the call this morning, Mary Jo, you may have known this, I didn't, about the special ed voucher. Did you hear that at the end? That was at the very end. So it's like $1,500 to help pay for things for kids in special ed. So I can send that link out as well. I have not heard of that at all. By the time you think you've heard it all, you haven't heard it at all.
Pay for services for them, like outside of school?
Mhm. For like a Chromebook, or it's got a whole list
Not
of
just to
things.
meet their needs
Mhm.
outside of what they receive at school already.
It's to meet the needs for special education, but I honestly, that literally happened right before I closed my laptop and hooked them here, but yeah.
Through the school district or?
Mhm. I wish let me see if I have it.
Wasn't that Clint?
It was Clint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe if you want to follow
I've got it here in a draft to send out, and I was just copying and pasting draft. It's pdses.tea.texas.gov.
That's what comes through. Say it again.
I'm sorry, pdses.tea.texas spelled out .gov. So I thought that was interesting. Great. Anything else? All right, thank you. Hold on.
You, Celeste, for all that valuable information. So here we're through.